Hello, hello. What a kind of introduction. It's really great to see so many of you in person that I normally see on Zoom alone. This is like a little 3D claymation that I created. For those of you curious, I used Recraft AI and then Halo AI to animate that. And I just thought it would be kind of a fun way to start. It's supposed to be a representation of Minneapolis. Not sure how accurate it is. This is my first time here. To introduce a really big topic, right? And it's such a big topic that I'm going to have to start in kind of an esoteric place, so I hope you don't mind, but I promise to ground us by the end. So what is it that makes us human? Because we're not the fastest, and we're certainly not the strongest or the biggest. And sometimes when I ask this question, I get, well, we use tools. And yes, we use tools in a rather unique way, if you think about things like cruise ships. But we're not the only species that uses tools either. And even the question of intelligence is becoming increasingly hard to answer, right? Are we the most intelligent species? Because dolphins have larger cerebral hemispheres, more closely connected sensory organs, thicker auditory nerves. And now we're wrestling with this new kind of alien intelligence entirely. And this is threatening something that we used to consider really unique to us as humans, which is intelligence. If this leaves you with a feeling of existential dread, don't worry. Not only are you not alone, but I think I've got some good news for you. I want you all to meet Sherman. Sherman is one of our star four-legged employees at Signal Theory. And although I fancy myself more of a cat person, even Sherman has more agency than ChatGPT and LLMs. And you can see this in action when Sherman spots a treat across the room. You can see him plan and take in gigabytes in just a moment of multimodal information, sight, sound, smell, and plan multiple steps ahead to achieve his intent, his desire, his needs. And I think that's just it, right? We are in the needs and desires business in advertising. And how can we expect to effectively influence other humans without understanding this core tenet of being human, to have needs and desires, to understand what that means? And that's why our mission at Signal Theory, which is human-driven, resonates now more than ever, in my opinion. Our mission is to bring joy, comfort, and meaning to an ever-changing world. And what an ever-changing world it truly is. I've been here for about the last decade working on the technology side, and the last couple of years have been some of the most exciting of my entire career. But my connection with AI actually extends beyond my stint at Signal Theory, or even the last couple of years. In fact, all the way back to my teen years, which on the left side of the screen, you can see the article I wrote about that, if you're curious. The short of it is that when I was 17, I would sneak out late at night with my friend Josh. We would climb atop the local elementary schools, smoke cigarettes, and talk about AI and Ray Kurzweil. At the time, it was a very niche subject, and it fascinated us. And this sort of nerdy teen angst drove us to question things like, will humans even be a part of work into the future? So naturally, into college, as we were sharing things like the cortical learning algorithm white paper, it built a foundation that when ChatGPT released in November of 2022, it raised a flag for me. It set off alarms, and I set those alarms off to our leadership team. In fact, this slide that you see right now is a slide directly pulled from one of those early 2023 leadership team presentations where I challenged our leadership team to come up with something that we sold, some deliverable that we sold that didn't fit into one of these categories. And it was just as true then as it is today that this is the worst this technology will ever be, and we need to plan for where it's headed. And so we decided that I would go to San Francisco and meet Boris Power, a technical staff member of OpenAI, as well as the author of this tweet, and find out what the intentions were. They weren't quite as clear back then. AGI, or artificial general intelligence, wasn't something well known at that point, but they really didn't mince words. Boris said that they were after AGI, a system that wasn't just, a master of a single domain like technology. It was to be a master of all knowledge domains. So I took this very frightening information back to Kansas City with me and presented again to the leadership team and said, we had to hop on this AI thing and ride the wave, right, before the wave swallowed us whole. To which our very friendly CFO reminded me of all the data obligations we held to our clients, certain data obligations that were outlined in pretty much all of our master service agreements, our MSAs. But it wasn't just the data side. Some of them had explicitly forebode AI use altogether. So we spent the greater part of 2023 and certain parts of 2024 on governance alone, having conversations with clients about our intentions with AI and how they needed to use it too, and what it really meant for our industry and our profession. But we also knew that we had to come up with a system that worked within this infrastructure. So naturally, we created our own, and we named it Al after one of our co-founders, Al Higdon, and of course a nod to Hal, if you're familiar with 2001: Space Odyssey. And so here I'm asking it, you're live at Decisions MLPS, want to say anything to the crowd, and it's responding. We found that through creating our own, it allowed us to fully steer it, right? Connect it to our own tools, and also give it a personality of its own. We also found that some of the enterprise providers like OpenAI and ChatGPT, while they provide certain data restrictions that you can set up for your organization, offered features that to us felt more like bugs, at least at the time in 2023. For instance, memory. If you were working on a client, then no longer work on that client. You want to be able to forget all of that client data. And so you only use with Al what's called in-context learning, meaning every time you start a new chat, his mind is effectively wiped clean. And there I am saying his, I'm trying to stick to its, but it gets confusing over time, right? And so we use this in-context learning while still providing state-of-the-art model upgrades on the back end. We just do so without providing any client data as part of that pre-training process. And I mentioned a personality. I got a kick out of him saying, gestures at digital existence when introducing himself, right? We get to program in a bit of snark, and because of this, it's allowed employees to feel comfortable with Al, almost treating Al like a friend of the agency. It's become something of a verb in the way that Google has in many ways. So I want to walk you through a little bit of our journey with Al. We launched Al originally as a 1.0 version, a really simple text-in, text-out version, much like the original ChatGPT in March of last year as something of a beta. And month-over-month growth looked really good, of course, until you compare it to the exponential growth as of late. But it wasn't until we introduced Al to tool usage. We talked about tools earlier. Tools like being able to create Google Docs or send emails or do real-world research or social listening reports, as well as generate images, SVGs, read PDFs, and understand charts within the PDFs. We introduced all these tools and can add them as we go. And with this, the number of use cases exponentially skyrocketed. And along with it, you can see usage went up as well, almost doubling month over month with the exception of the week off that we all get around the holidays, which was kind of affirming because it just meant that Al works just like we do. When we're there and using him, he's off to work, and when we're not, he's used less. I also just had a chance to check on March usage before I got here, and it is already doubled February. So in these last few days that we have left, it's just kind of icing on the cake. One downside of it being so private is that's kind of the only piece of quantitative data that we have is words estimated based on tokens, if you're familiar with how they work. So a total number of words input and output. But the qualitative data is just as interesting. We originally employed a 2-question survey. I hate surveys, so I kept it to 2 really simple multiple choice questions. And we asked 2 questions, right? How often do you use Al, and what kind of impact has it made in your work? And then we asked it 6 months later, here recently in winter of 2025, after tool usage was rolled out. And about half the agency says that they both regularly use Al and see a significant impact to their work. And I just had to ask myself, while telling the project managers to close their ears, what other types of software has this kind of big impact on the entire firm? And I think when you break apart this data, it gets even more interesting. So there were 2 really interesting things that actually stood out to me about this. One is that there was an over 80% correlation between the number of people who regularly use Al and the number of people who reported that they saw a significant impact to their work, pointing to the fact that it's just a tool like any other that takes experience and use to refine how you use it and what you get out of it. The second thing is that although the number of people who reported that they never used Al was cut effectively in half, if you answered that, by the way, you weren't asked what kind of impact Al made to your work, because obviously it wasn't. You were instead routed to a question of yes or no, would you like to learn how to use Al? If you said yes, it would route you to a training page. If you said no, it just sent you along your merry way. The number of people who said that they weren't interested in learning more actually had become more highly concentrated. It wasn't that there were more people responding that way. It was just that more of those 7 respondents said that they weren't interested in learning more. And this, combined with my sort of anecdotal conversations with people, led me to realize that some people just have a moral opposition to using AI at all. Whether it's the environmental headlines that you see or artist rights, whatever it might be, there's plenty of valid reasons why people may feel this way. And while I may personally believe that it'll be an integral part of our future, just like cell phones or any other technology, not everybody feels that way. And I think a great part of great creative work is diverse opinions. So I think one important piece of AI adoption is to accept these types of opinions in the room, right? In fact, I think all of AI adoption is better served when it's a judgment-free zone. I'm sure we would all Google quite a bit less if someone was over our shoulder looking at what we Google at any time. So part of the reason we built Al as a completely private system where even I cannot read the chats is because we want you to be able to ask anything, including personal questions. And it's that personal relationship that led to qualitative feedback like this. These are all quotes from different people about their experience with Al. My personal favorite being, I feel like I've touched the hand of God. That was maybe a bit hyperbolic, but it was still pretty fun to read. People really feel like Al is their friend at work, and we encourage it for personal use if people feel comfortable using it that way. And it's because my experience with using AI, the more you use it on a personal basis, the more you realize what it's really good at and what it's maybe not so good at, and you can apply that to your work. And so people have been doing that. I've gotten a lot more feedback about this from personal things that I didn't include here, but I've gotten some really great quotes. And it was this that we realized in talking with other agencies that this was kind of a unique experience. We had built something that not every agency had figured out, and especially the democratization of it, right? When talking with other agencies, a lot of them had sort of relegated AI to a subcommittee, a small group intended to explore different AI tools and then report that out to the rest of the agency. And so we felt like we had another income stream potentially on our hands. We are exploring it as our first software product that we are selling. So we built it as an intelligent sidekick built for ad agencies. And we built it around three main tenets that we actually built for ourselves but felt like it would benefit other agencies, and that is democratizing AI use. If you only ever give AI to your creative department, you are only ever going to discover creative use cases, and the same can be said for data or strategy. So we felt like at least a foundational model, some type of foundational LLM or foundational AI needed to be provided to the entire agency, finance team, C-suite, everyone included. And we wanted to not lock that in by user seat. We also feel like it needs to be incredibly easy. If there's some type of complex install or, God forbid, code required to actually access the AI, nobody is going to use it. And worse, they may actually just use some off-the-shelf solution anyway, which goes back to the privacy and security concerns that I talked about earlier, right? It's a completely secure and private platform where none of the data is ingested for training. In fact, none of it's even accessible to anyone, including administrators. And IT owns the logins as well at each organization. So we've seen success here as well. Cronin is an agency out of New Jersey. They're one of our first customers. They just renewed their one-year contract. And they say that just about every discipline has found it useful. And I think that, to me, stood out as success more than almost anything else, just because I truly believe that AI is such a powerful tool that if you don't provide it to everyone, you are hindering people's personal career success outside of just your own agency or your own organization. But at risk of sounding like I'm giving a sales pitch here, I want to get into some of the not so positive stuff. This was a conversation I had that was sparked by me asking the finance team, what use cases are you using for? It was actually Cronin that sparked this. They had reached out and said, hey, our finance team is looking for ways to use Al. What have you had success with? So I messaged that group and asked them, and I got some really great stuff in that thread, but then I also got a private message that said this. It was a perfectly good use case, and I suggested, why not share that with the group? To which I got this as a response, right? What if I don't actually know how to do my job, and now everyone knows? It was imposter syndrome, right? Something probably familiar to all of us, but rearing its ugly head, and AI was sort of partially to blame here. I think what stood out to me about this is that this was so opposite of the way that I think. And maybe it's because I work in technology and our space is being constantly disrupted every couple of years, if not every few weeks. Whether it's serverless technology or no code, we're always finding new ways to do things, and our time to delivery is always being cut in half, and we're being left to figure out how to make it happen. And so I realized that I can't really speak to the way everybody uses it for creative solutions, but I can speak to the way that my discipline and my group uses it. And so I want to talk to you about that specific journey next. This is probably the most impactful slide to that respect, which is that this year, our human programmers will produce less than 1% of our code in production. And last year, AI already outpaced us at the amount of code written in production. And yet, our to-do list is longer than ever. And that's because the number of possibilities that have now presented themselves, things that would take years, now take months, if not weeks, has led us to realize that we can contribute to the agency and our clients in completely new ways unthought of before. Plus, we never really enjoyed necessarily the code authoring part of it. I mean, some of us more than others, but it was really the ideation to, subsequent execution that we loved. We loved seeing us create something that was usable by users and enjoyable, right, more than anything. So taking those ideas and bringing them to fruition, being easier than ever, was nothing more than an idea generator, if anything. And why shouldn't we use AI to code, right? This is a chart representing 3 of the more recent reasoning models from OpenAI. All are new within the last 12 months, and the one on the far right there, O3, is new within the last 3 months. And if you're not familiar with Codeforce's ratings, maybe you're familiar with chess. So competitive chess uses ELO ratings to determine kind of the competitive nature of a player. If a player is the best in the world, they'll have the highest ELO rating, and depending on how good you are, that rating will go up and up. And so the programming equivalent of that is Codeforce's. It's a global rating scale where you can compete and take part in challenges to increase your Codeforce's ratings, or if you perform poorly, it may drop. So O3 is now the 7th best programmer in all of North America. If you could employ the 7th best programmer in North America for around $200 a month, why would you not do that? It's enabled some of the most creative work in my entire career in just the last few months. On the left, we have the Live Free Sonic website, which allows users to explore a 3-dimensional website experience and discover merch inside the space. It's been an award-winning website for us and an absolute killer for their merch campaign. And this was built in a matter of weeks, leveraging, of course, AI to program much of the 3-dimensional space, something that would have been completely impossible and unthought of before AI. And then there's like the less conventional creative examples that I have, like the data insights examples or social listening examples. On the right, it's supposed to be sort of a crude example of how you can use AI to creatively explore different ways of displaying data. I like to talk about it as turning the monologue of data into a conversation. What we've done is we've taken regular dashboard reporting, right? A great dashboard was sort of the pinnacle of data insights before, but now we can route that through AL and take care of a couple of challenges that were sort of unsolvable before, which is 1, clients actually have to go to the dashboard, and 2, they have to consistently check on the right things, right? Look for the right insights in the KPIs. But now you can use AI to do both of those things. On some regular automated cadence, check on the same data flowing into that dashboard and look for important insights around those KPIs, which serves as a reminder to your clients, but as well as pointing out the important things that they might miss. Now, this all sounds super logical, but we know one of the fundamental things about humans is that we're irrational. And it may just be that the seeds of great creative work exist in this irrational space, exist within this gray area. I sort of like this romantic view of great creative work, right? That it takes us, sort of the seed, to start that, and it all comes down to that desire and that intent, and defining that really well so that AI can help us create that. And I couldn't help myself but show you an example of just that sort of irrationality, and I promise to bring you all back down to earth. So that's what I have for you here, which is just an example from 2023 and one of my favorite AI companies, which is My Ask AI. My Ask AI's whole approach was you could build a chatbot for your website to help with things like customer service or e-commerce queries in 2 minutes or less. You just typed in your URL, it would create the chatbot, and you'd have it done. And no offense to those guys, I really love them, but they had some kind of bland social ads at the time where they were making coffee and they said, oh, in the time it takes to make a coffee, you can create a chatbot. So I sent him a message. I just happened to be a licensed skydiver, and I said, what's faster than a skydive? Let's see if we can create one in the sky. So I'm going to show you that really quick. It's just about 45 seconds.
I just jumped out of a plane, and now I need to know what to do next. So I'm gonna use My Ask AI, because in 2 minutes you can set up your own AI. And there we go. I can start asking questions.
Around 4,500 feet. the cell phone connection just dropped out. I had to land, so I didn't complete it till I was on the ground. So the jump cut didn't do it for them. They ended up not running this, but I had fun making it anyway. Also, I just noticed that everybody cringes when I pull out the cell phone. They're not worried about me. They're worried about like the cell phone dropping, which is very confusing to me. So I'll leave you with these takeaways. I don't want to spend too much time because I think I'm running low on time here, but truly, your human talent is more valuable than ever in the age of AI. It's all about that intent and desire, and it may just be that intelligence is no longer the quality trait of the present or of the future. It might be that it's agency. And you should challenge reasons to stay the course, because the use cases that machines were good at versus what humans are good at, those lines have blurred and they've changed, and you should test, of course, but accept where the reality sets us. And then because of that, you should be thinking about how to structure teams and hire differently. P&G actually just released a study I couldn't incorporate into this just a couple of days ago about how individuals powered with AI outperform entire teams without it. But interestingly, teams empowered with AI didn't perform that much better. So there's all sorts of really interesting questions to answer as we head forward. I'm going to shut up now because I'm over time. And yeah, if you have questions.
Thank you so much, Elijah. How does Alice score on accuracy when put up against ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, some others?
Yeah, I think it's very much on par. We use open source state-of-the-art models on the back end, and so it's going to have a performance really similar to the closed source ones that we're all familiar with. I'll also say that a simple trick for anybody that's setting it up, I talk pretty openly about our infrastructure and how we build it. One simple trick that works really well as far as like system prompting goes is just to ask that it cite its sources for every data point, and that helps you just confirm it in a quick and easy manner.
And then how are you servicing your Al product clients? And then an additional question there is, how are you integrating a SaaS business model within the agency?
Yeah, that's a huge question that I could take hours to talk about. I talked about our CFO. We think very differently. He's more of a slow thinker. I just like to do stuff. And that balances each other out really well. But he was right about one thing, which is that there's a lot more hidden about being a SaaS company than I ever realized. That said, the servicing side, the technical support side, is actually less than what I thought. And maybe some of that is that you have so much AI assistance on the coding and debugging side. But yeah, honestly, a lot of it's regulatory stuff. Finding a merchant of record that's willing to process your payments, things like that, that's been the biggest challenge.
And then do you see any potential downsides to treating Al like a human and assigning human attributes, i.e., he's a friend, a sidekick?
I don't do that. I did today, so I know I sound like a liar, but other people do that, and it causes me to do that. I try to stick to it pronouns, if that even, but like everybody else says he or so I don't know. It's just a natural part of, I think, creating something with snark, something that's friendly. Who knows how we'll interface with these things in the future, but I do think that it's sort of, the personification is sort of a natural part of interfacing with something that is so natural in the way that it speaks back to you.
Especially with voice interaction, right?
Oh yeah, voice interaction is my favorite thing. I didn't get into that today, but I've done a lot with voice interaction, and yes, it becomes very uncanny.
All right. Thanks so much, Elijah.
Yeah, thank you.